Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Patty Giarrusso, and this is Let's Talk Pets on Society Bites Radio. Today, we welcome back to the show Kathy Pobloskie from Lost Dogs of America and Lost Dogs of Wisconsin. And Kathy's going to talk with us today about luring shy dogs by using feed stations.
Those are perfect. And there are other things that work great too. One of the things that somebody has kind of just clued me into in the last little bit is these little cans of Vienna sausages that you can buy like at Walmart or the grocery store. And again, they cost less than 50 cents because I went and got a bunch of them. And they're really, truly very stinky. But they're the perfect size. They're very small. And, so it's not like you're opening up a can and then, wasting half the can, because you don't want to leave too much food. You wouldn't want to open a whole can of, regular size can of dog food, because you wouldn't want to leave the dog that much food. And we can talk about that in a minute if you like. But so you want a little can that doesn't cost a lot of money, that you can have a whole bunch of them, and you can just whip them out when you need them.
Yeah.
So that's just a real simple thing to start getting a dog to hang around in one area.
Right, because that's the whole point of it is to keep the dog.
Right.
If you've got the sighting, to keep that dog in that area and not chase them farther away. Exactly,
and just let them feel comfortable and relaxed. Once a dog is on a regular feeding schedule somewhere and nobody's bothering them, it becomes so much easier to catch them, whether it be, you have to humane trap them, or you can eventually just lure them to you, or, you can lure them into a vehicle or into a house or a garage or something. But if they are not getting food, then they spend their whole day looking for food, or, their whole time that they're awake looking for food. And that becomes that's why it's called survival mode. They need to be finding food, and of course water and some shelter to be able to survive. And if you give them a food source, if you give them a regular food source, you have just really helped them make the big step of coming out of survival mode, because then they no longer need to spend all their time doing that. So
yeah.
One of the other, and dogs will find a food source. So it's better if you control that rather than the dog, roaming and finding food, because they will find food. They will check out many places to find enough food to keep themselves alive. But it is just really a lot easier if you can control where they're eating, when they're eating, and how much they're eating. And that will really help in your strategy to eventually catch them safely.
Yeah. So
because of course
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, because of course the more they're roaming looking for their food sources, the more they're at danger of being hit by a car, and that really is the number one risk to lost dogs.
Yeah, definitely.
So sorry.
So no, I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned the risk of feeding them too much, that you did not want to do that, and why it's important to use these small cans of either sausages or small cans of kitty cat food or whatever.
Yeah. So what you don't want to do, for a couple of reasons, you don't want to. A lot of people will say, "Oh, okay, well, I will put their kibble out." Well, there's a couple of reasons why that's a bad idea. For one thing, kibble does not smell enough, so it doesn't lure them to the area. And the other thing is, dogs that are in survival mode, their metabolism changes and they don't need as much food. So if you go out and put as much kibble out there as you may normally feed your dog, you may cause them to bloat, and you don't want that. So we really don't recommend dry dog food at all. We recommend something that smells delicious, and that's why we'll often say cat food, not only because it comes in a smaller can. I mean, I know that there's some dog food that come in those little tiny containers too, and those work fine, but because cat food tends to smell worse, which is better, than canned dog food. And so that, and sometimes the cheaper the better. I just go and buy the cheapest little cans of cat food I can find. But I got to say, those Vienna sausages really smell too.
Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, like at Walmart, if you buy the Walmart brand, they're like 49 cents a can or something. And they're like a perfect little size, and even small enough like to just like slip into your pocket when you're walking, to stick one in your pocket. But I always try to think too, like if I was like really, really, really hungry, if I'm starving and I'm out there starving, and there's a pile of oatmeal, or there's a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, which am I going to go for, right?
Right.
And so the smell is really important. Not only it lures it to the area, but it just smells delicious, and that's what you want. Something that's going to attract the dog and keep them coming back looking for more. One of the things that people always worry about also is that they're going to be feeding wildlife, and perhaps even attracting wildlife that might injure their dog. We just have not found that to be the case. Yeah, sometimes definitely wildlife does come to eat it. Generally raccoons, possums, sometimes skunks. They're probably and of course cats as well. Are the animals that will usually come and share a feeding station with a dog. But I say that word share because it's really true. I mean, a raccoon will come and eat and leave for a while, and then something else will come and eat. A possum will come and eat and leave for a while, and then the dog will come. And as long as you take some of the juice from the can and dribble it on the ground, even if your dog didn't get any because the raccoon got most of it, he will still at least come and check it out. And that's kind of the key, that he's coming back to that spot every day. So you might need to just change your strategy a little bit and see what time your dog is coming, and make sure that you put the food out just before your dog is due to arrive, so that it's not sitting there all day and that something else is gobbling it up. But I really wouldn't be concerned that you're going to attract a larger predator that might harm your dog. We just have never found that to be the case. Yeah. And we have lots of coyotes and foxes. Foxes here, of course, wouldn't ever really probably harm a dog, but lots of times we've had pictures of foxes eating at the same bowl of food that we've left out for a dog.
Yeah.
And
so this is
been fine.
Yeah, so this is where the trail cam would come in, so that, as you mentioned, what time is your pet coming? This is how you would determine that, using a trail cam, right?
Yes. And it used to be, when we started 10 years ago, trail cameras were quite, they were not that common. And just like anything electronic, they've become very common and they've become very cheap. And you can buy trail cameras now. I have picked them up for less than $30 at, especially if you look at the clearance shelves at the sporting goods, like I wouldn't say sporting goods, but like your hunting stores, hunting and fishing stores, or even Walmart will usually clear them out at the end of the hunting season. And they usually run on some AA batteries, and they're just a really effective tool. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. I mean, of course, some people will go out and invest in one that's several $100s that actually sends the picture directly to their cell phone, which is nice, but it's not necessary. We're always trying to figure out ways for people of any means to be able to get their lost dog home safely, not just people that have, the money to spend on all the bells and whistles.
Right.
And honestly, you're really just looking to get a picture that it's your dog and the time of day and the date. They all have a little time date stamp on them, even the cheapest ones. And you don't need much else than that. If they have a little video feature, that's great, but beware that the video feature runs the batteries down a lot quicker, so then you'll be spending more money putting batteries in them, and you might miss your dog coming if the batteries have actually gone dead while it was out there. So we don't use the video feature unless we're specifically looking to see which way the dog was going after he left the feeding station, or which way he was coming in to the feeding station. But yeah, and the other thing with an expensive trail camera is that you don't want it to be stolen. Right. So, you know, for us and for our volunteers, I buy the least expensive ones I can find, because, you know, you're putting them out, often you're putting them out in some sort of a public place, and you can try to hide them or camouflage them a little bit. But, you know, you risk them being stolen, and you don't want to be losing several $100s a pop when they're stolen. But you can buy these fancy boxes that, you know, that are supposed to like be a security thing for your trail camera. But again, somebody can still just cut that whole thing off.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little harder for them.
So how long would you say people should use a feeding station before they set a trap? Because I know I've heard you say that before, that you don't have to go straight to the trap.
Right. So I would say until when you get the dog reliably coming to the feeding station, and they don't always come every day, especially at first. You know, they might be kind of still roaming a little bit and figuring this all out. But when you start to really see a reliable pattern with your dog, that is when I would bring a trap to the area. And then I would still not set the trap. What we do is we just bungee the trap open and start to move the food a little closer to the trap until it's eventually in the very back of the trap. When we see that happening on the trail camera, so when we see that the dog is comfortably going into the trap and eating the food, then we set the trap. That's when we unbungee it and set it. Setting it too soon can cause a lot of problems because, and this, you know, again, we've learned this from experience. If a trap if the dog steps on the trip plate of a trap and the trap starts to close and the dog isn't all the way in, like maybe his tail's still hanging out or whatever, if he senses something's up and he starts to back out and that trap is coming down and smacks him in the butt, he will never go in another trap again. And then you've lost that opportunity to use a humane trap to catch your dog. So, you know, then you've got to start figuring out other things. So, plus you can actually really injure your dog, you know, if you really, truly get smacked with a big door of a trap. So they're not something to mess around with. Traps are not something, they're not toys, and they're not, and they can be dangerous if not used correctly. So we always err on the side of caution when we're using traps.
Yeah, not to mention, I know we've had some bad things happen where some people that did not know what they were doing put out a trap and didn't check it all the time and captured some wildlife that died because it was left in there. And yeah, so it's not something to do if you don't know exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely. And you can't monitor it every few hours. Just don't do it. And like what we'll say to people here, like if we get really cold weather in the winter or we get hot weather in the summer, just bungee that trap back open again and use it as a feeding station. Keep using it to get your dog comfortable going in and out of it. Put the food back there. But don't try to catch them when the weather is inclement, because you can't get out. It would be very easy for a dog to freeze to death in a trap here.
Oh yeah.
You know, if it wasn't checked every couple of hours, because they're out there exposed, you know, and they can't get anywhere to. You can't move around enough to keep warm, and the same with overheating in the summer. And people say, well, I'm going to put some water in the trap, but a dog stressed out thrashing around in a trap is going to tip that water over really quickly.
Right.
And then there's going to be no water.
Right.
So.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. But it's important to follow the correct steps and the correct procedures.
Yeah, and that's what we always say is like patience will give you the best outcome. You know, going fast will end up probably causing you more time.